Welcome to the What Really Happened radio show. Putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show. It's Tuesday, May 28th, 2013, getting down to the end of the month, getting into June here, which you wouldn't know if you're up in upstate New York and Vermont because they're still dealing with the snow out there. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Manny is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. We just got a confirmation. Cindy Sheehan is going to be on our show in the last half hour of our program today to talk about her Tour de Peace bike ride all across America. And so we're looking forward to having her on the show. It's going to be a real treat, I think. Real quick comment about one of the commercials you heard just before we went to airtime, and that, of course, is Republic Trading Group about buying gold and silver. Once again, the manipulators have managed to just absolutely drive down the price of gold, which makes no sense when you've got all these gold brokerages having to settle their gold delivery contracts for their cash value. And so what they're doing, they're manipulating again. They're trying to drive the price of gold down to scare people out of gold back into the stock market. Obviously, this is the opportunity for you to buy physical, not paper contracts. They're just throwing these things around to keep the gold and silver prices down. And these contracts are already provable. They can't deliver. They've run out of the gold to deliver on these things, but they're using these paper contracts to try and drive the price down. When the contracts come due, they offer to settle for the cash value. What's the cash value? It's just more ink and paper coming out of those private central banks and their printing presses and their computers. That's all it is. So if they're going to all this work to crush down the gold prices, now is the time for you to buy physical. Absolutely, you should be buying. And that's what they're doing. If they can crush the price of gold down, they're all going to be buying physical. George Soros is buying physical as much as he can. The central banks are buying physical as much as they can. This is your time to be buying when the price is artificially crushed down. All righty, getting on to the news here. Obviously, this situation with Adam Kokesh continues to blossom. Over the weekend, I've been putting out the Facebook posts and all the rest of it, and I get hammered every time I put out a post anywhere about my online petition. Immediately get ganged up by all these people saying, all real Americans should join Kokesh. You need to go out there and grab a gun and what? March into Washington, D.C. and march into the state capitals. You're trying to talk Kokesh out of doing something that will matter. I'm not trying to talk Kokesh out of doing anything. Adam Kokesh doesn't listen to me, and neither do his supporters. All I am saying is, in the weeks remaining between now and July 4th, those gun owners and Second Amendment supporters who do not agree with what Kokesh is doing need to stand up and be very visible and very vocal, saying, Kokesh does not act or speak for me. But for some reason, somebody seems to think that's a real problem for law-abiding gun owners and Second Amendment supporters to stand up and say, Kokesh does not represent us, which tells us that whatever's planned for happening on July 4th is going to be blamed on or used to demonize gun owners as a class or Second Amendment supporters as a class. And it's an ugly, ugly situation. And I want to mention something here. For any of you who are actually thinking about joining this, okay, Kokesh is marching a crowd of untrained people carrying guns across a narrow bridge into Washington, D.C. The D.C. police, possibly even the Army, are going to meet Kokesh's marchers at the D.C. end of the bridge, which represents the city line. Now, why is this a problem? Well, when we come back from this commercial break, I'm going to tell you what an unmitigated disaster this is and what proof it is this is a setup. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about Adam Kokesh and his march. Well, he's calling it an armed revolution now. As of last Friday, he started calling it an armed revolution, marching into Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July. I don't know why he thought that would have any impact. I mean, all the elected officials, they're gone for the holiday. It's an empty city in terms of the decision makers. But anyway, he wants to have this little march going into Washington, D.C., and he has got all of these online propagandists out there trying to get people to join this march and shouting down anybody who's opposed to the march and even trying to shout down people who are simply saying, I don't think it's a good idea. And they're calling us cowards, and they're calling us anti-Semites, and they're just, whatever argument comes to mind. But I want you to think about something very seriously. Adam Kokesh's stated plan, and we know he is planning a confrontation because of that free AdamKokesh.com website. Kokesh's people are saying that no, it had nothing to do with the stage arrest for drugs 6 days after the website created. It's in anticipation of the 4th of July march. Okay, fine. Let's take them at their word. Take it at face value and take it as proof that Kokesh is planning to have a confrontation. Kokesh is marching his people into Washington, D.C. across a narrow bridge. They will be met at the D.C. end of the bridge by the police, possibly even the Army. Remember, the Pentagon's out there saying, we have decided we can intervene in a civil disturbance without waiting for the president or for the state governors to ask us. Complete disregard of posse comitatus. And it's not a coincidence they've announced this right now in this run-up to the march. So Kokesh's marchers are going to be on this narrow, confined space, on a bridge over water, unable to spread out, let alone attempt to flank the police and the Army, who will be free to do that, spread out and flank the marchers along that shoreline. In other words, Adam Kokesh is making the same tactical mistake the Persians did at Thermopylae and the British did at the Battle of Stirling. He has led his untrained crowd into a choke point, a killing zone. And unlike King Leonidas at Thermopylae or William Wallace at Stirling, the D.C. police and the U.S. Army are not an inferior force. Kokesh has set up this march in a manner guaranteed to be crushed by the government the moment anyone fires a shot. Maybe another FBI informant firing a starter pistol in the air. That's all it's going to take, just like at Kent State. Now, if Adam Kokesh were not working for the government to create this crisis, why would he make so many major tactical mistakes? We know he's planning for a confrontation. That free Adam Kokesh website tells us he is. And so he's basically leading his people into an absolute killing zone. And even if Adam Kokesh were not planning a confrontation, he knows the D.C. police are. They've already said they are going to meet and confront the marchers there at the end of the bridge. Why would Kokesh still go along putting his followers, an untrained crowd of people carrying guns, into a narrow choke point? It is a setup. Now, as I said before, in answer to all of my detractors, my online petition, and by the way, it's getting posted around the net now. It's over at the Daily Paul, as one example. My petition is not trying to say Kokesh should call it off. My petition isn't saying, that they should cancel the plans. All my petition says is, if you are a law-abiding gun owner and a supporter of the Second Amendment, you need to stand up and proclaim to the world in the weeks between now and the 4th of July that Adam Kokesh does not represent you. He does not act for you. He does not speak for you. And I realize this petition is not going to change what Adam Kokesh is doing, and that doesn't matter. The goal here is to get the message out to the American people that Adam Kokesh does not represent all gun owners and constitutional supporters across America. Because if something awkward does happen on the 4th of July, you know that's going to be the spin the government and the corporate media are going to put onto it. Oh, look at those gosh darn gun owners and how dangerous they are, and they actually tried to march into Washington, D.C., and yes, we successfully put them down and they deserved it. And now we've got to suspend the Constitution, got to suspend the Second Amendment at least. We've got to start taking the guns away from those dangerous gun kooks out there. We know how important the gun grab is to Barack Obama. It's been a major focus of his administration. We know that Adam Kokesh on his own Facebook page listed his employer as one of Barack Obama's organizations that is at the forefront of the gun grab. So the only way we can undermine the propaganda value of what looks to be another staged event is to get that message out to America. Adam Kokesh does not represent gun owners and Second Amendment supporters. We do not approve of what he's doing. We see it as a reckless and dangerous provocation, and that's all the petition says. And yet, from the firestorm of criticism and ad hominem attacks that we're seeing on the Facebook posts associated with this, it is clear that somebody somewhere thinks it's a major problem for gun owners to stand up and say, Kokesh does not represent me. And that's all we're saying. Why is that such a problem? Unless Kokesh's march is designed to create a propaganda climate to demonize all gun owners. And I think that's very clearly what it is. I can take some joy in the fact that I obviously ruined the holiday weekend for a lot of government propaganda shills online. Couldn't get out to get their beers and hot dog. They had to stay at their computers. Oh, there's another gosh darn post there. We got to slam on that. And like I said, you look at the content of these posts. They're not reasoned arguments. There are no facts or logic. It's just screaming. You're cowards. You're traitors to America. You're anti-Semites. And just this constant exhortation to get more people to join in the march. My goal with my petition is to have more signatures on it than Kokesh has marchers. And that is why I am asking everybody listening to this show, go to the petition itself. Don't even need to go to my little subpage about Kokesh and stuff. Just go to the petition itself. It's over on iPetitions, and just post that link to the petition everywhere that gun owners and Second Amendment supporters congregate. And just let's get as many signatures on there as we can. If we have more signatures on that petition than Kokesh has marchers, then it's going to be a real tough sell for the government and the corporate media to use whatever happens in D.C. on the 4th of July to tarnish all gun owners, to further erode our constitutional rights. So, by the way, Oath Keepers has come out. They do not endorse what Kokesh is doing. We know that last Friday when Kokesh started calling himself an armed revolution and talking about marches into all 50 state capitals, Alex Jones reversed himself, and he's now basically not in agreement with what Kokesh is doing, and I think that's a really good thing. More and more videos coming out from other people saying this is a really dumb idea. And so, but we got to keep up the pressure because the government has got, 4 or 5 weeks now to keep this thing going, to try and build it up, to try and create the illusion of an armed uprising, a little tiny one trapped on a bridge that can be brutally crushed in order to scare the rest of America into staying silent and doing as they're told. That's the goal here, to create a revolution under their control that can be crushed rather than risk a general uprising of the population that they might not be able to put down easily and cheaply. But we know, because of all these purchases of hollow point ammunition, all this militarization of the police, all these armored vehicles that are going out there, all of this very expensive technology at a time when they can't even keep the public schools open, we know the federal government is preparing to go to war against the American people. All they need is a flashpoint, a setup. And Kokesh is handing them one. The government needs a new Pearl Harbor, which we now know was also a setup. Roosevelt goaded the Japanese into the attack, knew they were coming, hid it from the Hawaiian commanders. The USS Maine in Havana Harbor, oh, it was a Spanish mine, let's go to war against Spain. And then years later it turned out it hadn't been a mine at all, just a design flaw in the ship itself. Vietnam, torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, turned out they didn't exist. This is how the government gets its agenda. It lies to you. It deceives you. It tricks you. It creates events that will trick the American people into going along with a new agenda. And right now, Obama's agenda is he's got to grab the guns away from the American people because the American people are angry. And let's face it, Obama needs some kind of a major distraction from Triplegate. Benghazi is still exploding in his face, so is IRS Gate, DOJ Gate. They're trying to shift the focus away from Benghazi onto the IRS and DOJ because Benghazi is the real, deep, dark, ugly secret of the Obama administration. Now, we're hearing a lot of talk from people about counter marches. We've got a gentleman here, Mr. Kodnosky, is talking about marching on the state capitals wearing handcuffs, the antithesis of Kokesh. And as I mentioned on yesterday's show, the problem with joining Kokesh's march with signs and placards saying you oppose him is the media can frame their coverage shots so the public can't read the signs, and they'll claim that these are all Kokesh's supporters. So if you really want to have a counter march, arrange to have it in a different location, so you can't be confused with Kokesh. Take lots of pictures and videos. Only the independent media is going to cover the counter marches. We will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, just before we went to airtime today, I was watching on the corporate media, because I always like to find out what they want us to be thinking. And Obama was up there with this big presentation. He's there in New Jersey with Governor Christie talking about all the wonderful things the government did to take care of the victims of Hurricane Sandy, which we know really wasn't all that much, and of course it completely overlooks the fact that the reason the storm was so damaging was that spending on infrastructure has been slashed in order to send money to Israel and pour more money over Wall Street and fund these wars of conquest. And, we got confirmation from people living in the area that the trees were not being cut back from the power lines, which means when the storm came through and these branches came down, they'd pull the power lines down with them. Now, a lot of people are saying, why is Obama doing this? Hurricane Sandy was a long time ago. He should be over in Oklahoma talking about what happened there, and he was over the weekend. And what he's doing is he's grandstanding. He knows the Americans are becoming aware of Triplegate. Benghazi, IRS gate, DOJ gate, and he's out there. He's campaigning because it's what he does best. He's out there campaigning to try and win back his public approval. Because if he doesn't get it, Congress is going to feel a little more willing to maybe vote contrary to the interests of the White House. They're all looking at Obama as not necessarily being an asset for their own re-election campaign within the Democratic Party, and figuring, well, if I can't gain anything by having Obama show up at my campaign rallies in 2014 or 2016, and I might as well go with some other agenda here. And so he's out there. Obama knows he's in trouble with the American people, and he's out there saying, look at all the great things I did here and there. Pay no attention to Benghazi and IRS and DOJ abuses. Really look at the wonderful things we've done. So he's just out there, he's grandstanding. He's campaigning. He's trying to win back the approval of the American people. I don't think he's going to get it, to be very, very honest here. Now, getting into Triplegate and looking at the Internal Revenue Service, we're seeing this article that came out of National Review, how the Internal Revenue Service is starting a process of locking down all their computer data across the entire agency. I was always under the impression that your tax records were secure or supposed to be secure, but I guess maybe now they're locking down the data about just how they're doing what they're doing. And I don't know how good that's going to be. Yes, it might prevent journalists from coming in and digging for what the IRS has been up to, but it certainly won't stop a congressional subpoena. If Congress says, we demand X, Y, Z records, the IRS has no legal grounds to refuse. And the fact that they're locking down all records all across the agency tells us that the wrongdoing was not confined to these few little rogue employees and this one little office in Cincinnati, which was the original story. They're locking down everything everywhere. Basically, they might as well put a flashing neon sign over the building saying, we're guilty, you got us. Getting into a bunker mentality here. All righty, let's see what we've got. Now, we're still following up on what appears to have been another staged terror attack over in Woolwich, Britain. And a lot of people are posting articles and videos about why this appears to be a fake. And again, I don't need to get tangled into all of the little fine details about why it's a fake. We just assume it's a fake because so many of them are. All of them are, ultimately. We need to focus on what is it being used for. And now, of course, we're getting this very alarming story out of the Daily Mail. The enemy is everywhere. and the former head of MI5, is now calling for the British people to spy on each other, to turn them all into informants. You've got to... the same thing we saw here in the U.S. with see something, say something, which is kind of what we do here at Republic Broadcasting and WhatReallyHappened.com, but of course that's not the see something, say something they really intended. But they're trying to turn their entire population into a bunch of paranoid government snitches. And again, this is exactly what Germany was doing, or what the Nazis were doing. Get everybody to be a snitch, convince everybody there's a snitch looking at them. Now, in the category of dirty tricks here, over in Dearborn, Michigan, somebody left a pressure cooker in the restroom of the Adobe Hotel. It turned out to be just a pressure cooker, nothing in it, but it forced the evacuation of the guests and resulted in the cancellation of the Sunday night banquet of the University of Muslim Association of America. And that, of course, is the reason it was done. We don't want the Muslims getting together and having a good time and presenting a positive image to America. We can't let that happen after all the billions that have been spent demonizing Muslims in Hollywood movies and TV shows and the corporate media. We can't let the world see that they're just plain folks who have associations and banquets. And so that's the reason this was done. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials here. We'll be back after these words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. A little story that just got put up at WhatReallyHappened.com. Apparently, IRS officials visited the White House more than 100 times during the period at which conservative groups and political dissidents were being targeted. During the administration of George W. Bush, the head of the IRS visited the White House just once in 4 years. So this thing is definitely turning ugly. What did the president know, and when did he know it? Now, getting into the area of complete total surveillance over us all, and they're trying to use this Woolworth hoax to get everybody saying, oh, yes, we've got to have total surveillance and everything. There is an interesting little bill that was passed down in Houston, Texas, because as you know, along with all these government drones and all of this other stuff that the police are getting, drones are now commercially available. In fact, I was watching an episode of Top Gear last night where they were in Africa trying to follow the course of a river, and I love that show, and they had their own aerial drone to fly up and reconnoiter the territory around them. So you can buy these things, and they're probably a lot of fun. But, of course, they can be misused. And so Houston just is considering a law that will make using drones to photograph people on private property a crime. And I'm kind of in agreement with that. You should have a right to privacy on your own property in your own backyard. But, of course, this bill has exceptions for law enforcement, fire suppression, investigation of chemical spills, and apparently there are other exceptions. If the drone camera is of sufficiently low resolution, then you're allowed to photograph people on their own property. They're even allowing real estate agents to use drones to photograph homes for marketing materials, even though those homes are still occupied. But they know they're going to go on the market, so they fly a drone and they take a picture of what it looks like and put it on the market. So we're getting into this really gray area where the military, the government, law enforcement, environmental protection agencies, and even corporate interests are allowed to use drones to take pictures of you in your own home, in your own backyard, but you as a private citizen are not. And that's a violation of the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. If it's illegal for me to fly a drone and look into the police station to see what they're doing, it should be illegal for the police station to fly a drone and look into my window and see what I'm doing. Not that they need a drone, because I got this little TV camera right here. And once again, we're seeing a double standard emerge, where there's one set of rules and law for ordinary people and a completely different set of rules and law for corporations and government officials, law enforcement, and the military. Now, speaking of the military, Syria is definitely being ramped up on a wide variety of fronts. A lot of people are making a big deal over the fact that Senator John McCain apparently snuck across the Turkey-Syria border to meet with the rebel leadership. We don't know why. He may be getting ready to do with Syria what Representative Charlie Wilson did in Afghanistan. Become the point man for escalating covert warfare against the government that is being toppled. Now, the really big news here is that the European Union is now lifting their embargo on arms to the hired mercenary army. They claim it's to spur the peace process because, oh, if we give all these weapons to the hired mercenaries, then Assad will come to the table to talk peace. The only problem with that, of course, is the United States is still insisting that if there is a deal between the rebels and the Syrian government, it does not include Assad. And that, of course, is a condition guaranteed to make sure there will be no peace negotiations. Now, Qatar is trying to arrange for Yemen's military elite to join the Free Syria Army. And once again, the Free Syria Army is 95% not Syrian. And these Yemenites are just more of the same. Hired mercenary armies sent in to topple a government to make way for a pro-Western friendly, private central banking friendly regime to take over. Meanwhile, even though the European Union is lifting the embargo on weapons to the hired mercenary army, they are continuing the sanctions that harm the civilian population of Syria. At this point, it can no longer be said that the U.S. and Europe are unbiased neutrals trying to resolve a civil war. Very clearly, they're trying to give weapons to the hired mercenary army. They're continuing to starve the civilian population of Syria to try and turn them against Assad. That does not appear to be working, because those Syrian people are not fighting for Assad. They're fighting for their own country against a hired invasion force here. Now, Russia obviously is very angry about the lifting of the European Union arms embargo. They are going to send those S-300 air defense missiles into Syria in order to stabilize the situation and deter what Russia calls hotheads coming in and bombing the place, meaning, of course, Israel. And so Russia is out there saying basically, they need to arm the Syrian government to try and keep this war from escalating any further. And, of course, the U.S. wants exactly the opposite. They want Assad gone. They want their newly created Syrian government to take over, sell Syria's oil only for the U.S. dollars, keep Israel happy, maybe carve off a big chunk of Syria to give to Israel as part of the bargain here. Now, here's where it gets really dicey. Israel is warning Russia that Israel is prepared to attack Russian state transports bringing these weapons into Syria. Now, when Russia responds to what is clearly an act of war by Israel, who do you think Israel's going to turn to protect them from those bad old mean Russians? We didn't do anything to them. We just shot down a few of their planes. They're making a big deal out of nothing. You, the American children, have to go stand between Russia and Israel because that, of course, is your only reason to be in existence. And so they're really cranking that up. Russia has just called a snap drill. All of their armed forces are on 24-hour alert right now. Russia is sending a very clear, unequivocal message to Israel. If you attack our aircraft over Syrian airspace, we will respond. And we know the only reason Israel is out there bluffing and saying we're going to attack your planes is Israel's absolutely convinced that they've got millions and millions of young Americans to throw in front of themselves as bullet stoppers. That's where this is going. And remember, I've told you time and time again, Israel would love it if they could trick the United States and Russia into a mutually destructive war that would remove both countries as major players in global geopolitics and leave Israel and its nuclear arsenal in control of the Middle East, in control of the Middle East oil, which would put them in economic control over pretty much all of the planet. That's what Israel really wants. Our so-called friend in the Mideast is trying to play let's you and him fight with the U.S. and Russia. We're going to grab a phone call here real quick. Jim in South Carolina, thank you for waiting. What's on your mind?
Yeah, back to the drones. You buzzed right through that one. You know, you can go online and buy a drone for about $5,000 that'll stay aloft for about an hour, depending on the battery power that you equip it with high-resolution cameras, fly a pre-programmed GPS course, and has the ability to station keep in a 10-mile-an-hour wind.
That is a pretty impressive little drone. I mean, for me personally, the only reason I would want to have a drone would be to use for filmmaking, you know, in places where you can't get a camera crane in. And I can think back on a couple of occasions during Lost where having one of those drones with one of the high-end Canon cameras that will shoot full 1080p high-def video with high quality would have saved us a lot of time and grief there. But I understand everybody's playing with these toys and everything, and yeah, they're commercially available. And I think down in Texas is the beginning of a trend where we will see all these laws passed to say it's okay for the police and the government and these environmental agencies and various private corporations are allowed to use these things, but you, ordinary American citizens, are not. I think it's the beginning of a trend.
Do you think that's going to stop somebody like me? I doubt it.
Well, I can't speak for you, obviously. I mean, you know, it certainly would stop me, but then I already have a healthy respect for other people's privacy. You know, I'd be using the thing to shoot wildlife images or just nice vistas of the beaches and stuff because that's the way I think about this kind of thing. Yeah, but
I'm not talking about other people's privacy. I fully enjoy privacy and I respect other people's privacy. But do the paramilitary police have any privacy? That's what I want to know, and I don't think they do.
Well, you know, that, of course, is being argued through the court system right now with this issue of just cell phones and cameras in the streets, where even though the courts have ruled repeatedly that the police out in public have no expectation of privacy, but that hasn't stopped police officers across the country from confiscating and even smashing cameras, confiscating memory cards if you catch them doing something they ought not to be doing. And that's one of the reasons why, if you are going to any kind of demonstration or protest movement, you need to consider having covert cameras. The Luxi headset is a good one, a good quality image. It's built into a Bluetooth headset. You really need to take some black paint and cover that little red light at the front that comes on when it's recording. There's this other company. We used to have them as advertisers, and I'm sorry, I cannot remember their name, but they had products called the DigiPen, which was a pen that sits in your pocket that's a camcorder recording. It's got, they also had, there's various sunglasses out there with cameras built in, and I really think that's the way to go because the police can't smash or confiscate a camera they don't know is there. The other thing I would recommend very, very strongly, and I use these myself, it's called the iFi card, and they're up to I think it's a 16 gig class 10 card. It's an SD card, goes into various cameras, most of which are already programmed to use it. If you put it into the Canon, you get all these iFi options start appearing in the menu. And what it will do is, when you take a picture on this camera, it will locate a hotspot, a Wi-Fi hotspot, and you have to pay a yearly fee to open up this public network, but when you take a picture or a video, it is instantly sent across Wi-Fi to reside on some server of your own choosing. So even if the police take the camera, take the iFi card, the cat is out of the bag. And so if you're involved in any kind of peaceful demonstrations, and you are taking pictures to document the event, having one of these iFi cards in your camera and having it set up to simply snarf out a local Wi-Fi router to send the pictures out of reach of the police is definitely the way to go. Of course, we know what's going to happen. The police will get a device that will jam Wi-Fi along with the cell phones wherever they're operating so that you can't get stuff up. But, you know, be creative. Have multiple cards. Swap them in and out. So the police take one and you still have a couple of others hidden on your person. I'll tell you what's going to happen next because we've already seen this idea being proposed by Apple. All future digital cameras and smartphones with cameras are going to have a device built in where the police or the government can send out a signal to disable them immediately. They're already talking about that. Oh, we got to go in and bash heads on the Tea Party, Occupy protesters, disable all the cameras in the area except for the ones that are licensed by us to make us look good and the other guys look bad. Anything else? Jim? Oh, he dropped. All right. Getting back to Syria, as I mentioned, under the cover, or rather to sort of provide a politically acceptable cover for this escalation in arming of the hired mercenary army, the excuse is it will push along the peace process if we arm the rebels and get them all back to the peace table. Now, the rebels have already said, no, we're not going to go to the peace tables. We want to take over the country, and we want to be the new government, which, of course, is not the U.S. agenda. They're already forming this other little group over here that is going to be swapped for Assad. And, of course, the U.S. continues to assist, in peace talks. Assad can't attend. Iran can't attend. It's just going to be us telling Assad to get out and let the new government in. And Assad's not going to go for that. Assad is not going to go for that. Now, as I mentioned earlier, in response, possibly in response, to Israel's belligerent talk that they will shoot down Russian aircraft carrying the weapons to Syria, Russian warplanes have gone on 24-hour alert in what is being called a snap alert drill. The timing, I don't think, is a coincidence. And this includes deployment of 4 regiments of these S-300 air defense systems. So Russia is sending a message that if Israel carries out an attack on Russia's transport aircraft, Russia is going to treat it as an unprovoked act of war. And Israel will say, fine, go ahead, go to war against us. We've got the Americans to throw at you. And as I said before, Israel would absolutely love it if they could trick the U.S. and Russia into a mutually destructive war. Wipe each other out as a political power, as a global power, and leave Israel and its nuclear arsenal in control of the Middle East and its oil. That's what Israel would love to have happen. And that's why they're provoking this situation, because Israel knows if they shoot down the Russian planes and Russia starts acting like they're going to attack Israel, Israel couldn't possibly win a war on its own against Russia. Russia could literally wipe them off the face of the earth. Israel is doing this because they know they have got a lock, they have bribed enough congressmen, they got enough blackmail information on Obama where they absolutely know it's a guarantee. Your sons, your daughters will be sent to die defending Israel from a Russian retaliation. Now, public opinion against yet another escalation, a new war in Syria or anywhere else continues to grow. We already know the polling numbers here in the United States overwhelmingly show Americans do not want any more war. We're sick and tired of this stuff. Over in Britain, in the Daily Mail, they've got this article about Foreign Secretary William Hague basically saying we have got enough problems at home without getting mired in another foreign bloodbath. And he's making a very valid point. The British government has been hand in glove with the U.S. government in all of these invasions, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of these other places. How is it benefiting Great Britain? It doesn't seem to be. It's just the U.S. says go kill these people, and Britain says yes, and behind it all, of course, Britain has their problem with Israel firsters, the same as the United States. We're going to take a break for commercials. We will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we want to talk about raising on a busted flush. I just got this article here from the Daily Mail in Great Britain. The story about the guy they told us was Osama bin Laden who got killed 2 years ago has changed again. Now they're claiming that the reason there was no body to bring back and there was no way to take pictures or do any testing about this is that Osama bin Laden blew himself up with a suicide belt after the Navy SEALs shot him in the thigh. That's the new story. Of course, there was no report whatsoever from the Navy SEALs on the scene that there was any kind of an explosion. But that's the new spin. Oh, the reason there were no pictures, the reason we couldn't bring him back, he blew himself up with a suicide belt. They're not even trying to keep these stories consistent here. All righty, let's see. Getting back to Syria, we're getting reports that inside Syria, the Syrian forces and the Syrian people are actually achieving major victories against the hired rebel army. Because remember, these mercenary armies, they're there for a paycheck. They're not going to take chances. They're not going to be splendidly brave in the face of confrontation or threat. They're going to fade back under the principle of he who fights and runs away will live to fight another day. And so Assad and his forces and his people have been gaining ground. That is probably what precipitated this all of a sudden removing of sanctions regarding arms to the Syrian hired mercenary army. And all pretext of trying to be fair and balanced and we're just here to stop this horrible, tragic civil war are completely abandoned. The weapons are going to start pouring in on both sides, with the U.S. and Europe giving arms to the hired mercenaries and Russia bringing in their advanced weaponry for Assad and his forces. And remember the lesson of Vietnam. A foreign invading force is never as effective in combat as people on the ground fighting for their homes and families they can see before their very eyes. And remember, Russia warned the United States, both through Hillary Clinton and through John Kerry, that if the U.S. went into Syria and or Iran, Russia was committed to turning it into the new Vietnam and wear the U.S. down in a war of attrition, and Russia can do it. They've got a strong economy right now. They are not exhausted by decades of war. Putin kicked out their money junkies, took over control of their central bank, paid off Russia's national debt in just 3 years. The last American president who paid off America's national debt was Andrew Jackson. And he shut down the second bank of the United States in order to be able to do it. The U.S. does not have the money, the manufacturing, or the men to win a prolonged ground conflict in Syria or Iran. So Russia's threat of turning it into a new Vietnam and destroying America in a war of attrition is credible. They can do it. Now, we've got to take a station identification break here. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, over in Israel, which really just seems to be trying to kick over every anthill they can, there is a renewed push to try and get peace talks going between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. And, of course, Netanyahu is starting off this whole process by saying, no, we will not freeze settlement construction in return for a resumption of talks. Which basically means Netanyahu is saying, yeah, we'll talk all you want, but we're going to go on building those illegal settlements. What are you going to do about it? Now, the United Nations is accusing Israel of continued violation of human rights with regard to the treatment of the Palestinians. And Israel, as always, is going to ignore the United Nations. And frankly, as long as the United Nations puts up with this stuff, they're undermining their own credibility. Because remember, Israel's membership in the United Nations had 2 conditions applied to it. Israel is the only nation to be allowed into the United Nations with conditions on their membership. The first condition was a right of return to Palestinians to their homes and villages that were taken from them by the creation of Israel. The second condition was that if the Palestinians chose not to return, Israel would financially compensate them for their lost homes. Israel has never complied with either condition. And as long as the United Nations allows Israel to sit there at the United Nations, defying the United Nations, defying the conditions on its own membership, then the United Nations is destroying its own credibility. Meanwhile, Israel's come up with a new little gizmo to put along their border with Palestine. They're called robo-snipers. They are automated, remotely controlled machine guns with telephone cameras on them. They're up on staff. Think of like all those TV cameras they have watching you on the streets of America, and imagine that each one of those has a .50 caliber machine gun attached to it, and you'll have an idea what this is all about. And these are designed to enforce a 1,500-yard buffer zone, which means the Palestinians can't even come up to the border of their own territory. Israel's idea is you're not allowed to be within 1,500 yards of our border, even though it's all usable farmland. It's ground that the already overcrowded Gazans could use. And Israel's attitude is, no, you're not allowed to use that 1,500 yards on your side of the border, or we will shoot you with these robotic guns. Now, Israel is looking for any kind of reason that they can, get this situation going. We reported over the weekend about how rockets had hit Beirut immediately following Hezbollah's declaration of their support for Assad in Syria. And everybody's saying, well, obviously these rockets came from Israel. And so Israel turned around and said, well, somebody in Lebanon fired a rocket into Israel. Couldn't find where it landed. No hole in the ground. Nobody hurt. No property damage. But trust us, we know they fired a rocket. Then there was an announcement by Israel that a rocket had been fired from Sinai and hit an apartment building in Eilat, in Israel. And they were making a big deal about those gosh darn Egyptians, and we've got to take control of Sinai. And it turns out there was no rocket. It was a bombing involving criminal activity, and that's something you need to understand about life in Israel. They have a huge, huge organized crime issue in their country, up to and including the government itself. There are a lot of bombings of nightclubs and places like that that are actually turf disputes between rival crime gangs. And every time one of those bombs go off, the first thing the Israeli media says is, oh, it's the Hamas, it's the Egyptians, it's the Lebanese. And in this case, they finally had to admit, yeah, this was an organized crime action. Made you look. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I've had several people email me the link to the Fox News report from December of 2001, in which they reported that Osama bin Laden had died of natural causes. But, when you have a supervillain like that, the mere fact that he's actually dead should not discourage the government from using this guy to continue to scare people into accepting the war on terror and the war on your constitutional rights and the war on privacy. And so they kept him alive, and every Osama since late 2001 was a fake and a fraud. A lot of people are pointing out, have you noticed this guy who was on dialysis? And every time we see him, he looks younger and healthier, and his hair is going back to black. It was completely absurd here. All right, we're going to grab a phone call. George in Texas. Aloha, George. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? George, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh, good. You're on the air. What's on your mind?
When John McCain was over there, I heard talking with the Syrian rebels or the Free Syrian Army, which really not Syrians. Next time him or Lindsey Graham go over there, we should just give him a battle dress and equip him and tell him to go, send him into Syria and say, you go take out Assad.
Well,
Keep us out of it.
Well, I had a lot of people write in and say, wouldn't it be nice if the Free Syria Army kept McCain? And, of course, we then got a reply from the Free Syria Army saying, what did we ever do to you? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing, too, I heard it was rumor. I don't know if it's a rumor or confirmation or not, but if anybody who attended the National Boy Scouts meeting, because I was hearing from one of the people that went to that conference saying that that they were threatened if they did not vote for a certain way to allow openly homosexual people in. I'm not part of Boy Scouts or not, that they'd be threatened with lawsuits and all that stuff. And I want to know if anybody heard those threats from the National Boy Scouts convention.
I really wasn't paying attention to it, but, I was a Boy Scout myself many years ago, and, folks, there were gay kids in there. It was just nobody talked about it. We didn't consider it anybody's business. And I think they're making a big stink about it because it is a distraction away from Triplegate. Just like we saw in election season, we don't want to talk about the economy. We don't talk about the Federal Reserve. We're going to make gay rights an issue. We're going to make abortion an issue. It's just more distraction here. I don't agree with the Boy Scouts having an overt anti-gay policy, but like I said, it hasn't really stopped gay kids from being in the Boy Scouts. Or, for that matter, gay scoutmasters, and that's just the reality.
Yeah, another thing, too. Have you heard of the veterans' placards being stolen from the graveyards, those nice copper placards?
Yes, I have heard of that. Metal thieves are everywhere. And, it's kind of a shame. We see our government over this last weekend, trying to glorify war and say we will remember you, and yet funding to maintain the war memorials and the graveyards has been slashed. And the monuments are falling into disrepair, and as you're pointing out, the graveyards are being looted by metal thieves. And it really shows that the government is very insincere when they talk about honoring those who gave their lives in these various wars. It's just, again, they're trying to convince young people that going into the Army is a great thing. I've noticed, along with all the war movies about how great we are when we whipped Germany and Japan and the rest of it, of course, there a huge flood of ads for military recruitment. Apparently, the Army is getting its own TV series on one of the networks. I don't even know which one, but every week it's just going to be a new reality show showing how great the Army is and how well trained they are and how the amazing things that they can do dangling on a rope from underneath a helicopter or various other things like that. And again, it's just more propaganda. They're trying to sell military service to the America's youth. They're trying to sell war as a really, really good thing. And the American people are tired of it. We've been at war on all these oil nations for getting away from Bretton Woods. We've been at war now longer than we were in World War II. And no end in sight right now. Anything else, George?
Yeah, they busted 2 grave robbers.
Good. I'm glad they got him. I'm glad they got him.
Well, the thing is, it was one of the Texas Revolutionary officers, and they tried to steal the gold bullion cufflinks off his uniform.
No, that's
pretty tacky. The only thing that got the police's attention was when they opened the casket trying to get the cufflinks, they all threw up. That made a big noise in the graveyard.
Well, I'm glad they fell flat on their face in that regard because, again, I understand in this economy people are stealing things, and because the police budgets are totally focused into writing traffic tickets, they get away with it. You'd be amazed what metal thieves have done here on the island of Oahu. They have literally stolen power lines and blacked out whole neighborhoods. There was this amazing building that we used to use as a location on Lost. It was the Hydra Station, and it is the remains of this top secret World War II ultra long wave radio system. It was the precursor to ELF and VLF, and it could literally send underwater messages to submarines, and its signal reached all the way from New York City to Tokyo Harbor. And it should have been preserved as a museum because it was just filled with all these amazing radio artifacts. And I took all these wonderful pictures of it. But metal thieves had got in there, and they'd stripped out all the copper and just devastated the place. And it was heartbreaking to see. And for me, I don't know what copper trades for right now. When I was a kid, copper was junk metal. It's what you made the plumbing out of. And today, all of a sudden, we're being taught to scramble after little bars and rounds of copper because it's a future investment. I think it's a big joke myself. I mean, but it is. We're seeing these iconic things being destroyed. Yes, the plaques off of the veterans' graves. That's a shame. Over at the remains of the Cocoa Palms Resort on Kauai, I did a video about that on YouTube. There used to be plaques on the trees showing what celebrities planted those particular trees. Those have all been taken. And they're not just taking the metal, they're taking the history. And that is a crime against us all.
I mean, they've been caught trying to steal from the old native burial grounds. They're considered agents of some of the natives.
Yes. Yeah, it's a real shame, and yet we're always being told, pay no attention to that stuff. You got to hate the Muslims. You got to support the war. We've got to go on out there and force private central banking on the rest of the world. Anyway, anything else, George? Because we got other callers on the line.
You can move on to the next caller.
All right, and we're going to move on to Alex in Texas. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Just calling because I'd like to make a quick point. You had mentioned that Senator McCain, former presidential candidate, had gone over to Syria to speak to Al-Qaeda, which supposedly there are allies there. And I just have one simple thing. If McCain can go, if we can send an envoy, a diplomatic envoy, to speak to our enemy / ally, why is it that we have to send Dennis Rodman and not someone of diplomatic stature to talk to Kim Jong-un? How does that work? How does it
Dennis Rodman, I don't know what official capacity, if any, he served.
It was just rhetorical, because the point I'm trying to make is they can go see an ally who we're at war with globally, and the battlefield is the entire planet, they can go see him or them in Syria, but they can't talk to, or they can't Skype with King Yamun. Someone can't come up with something. It's that. I mean, I just don't understand the axiom anymore. You know what I mean? It's so ridiculous. I just don't get it. How is it that a former presidential candidate can go meet with our ally slash?
Okay, well, he's still a United States senator. Okay, and he may be functioning in his official capacity, in which case this is not a violation of the Boland Act. For Dennis Rodman, as a private citizen, he can go visit North Korea, but he cannot engage in anything that might be considered attempting to influence U.S. foreign policy, or he will go to jail. But McCain, you know, he's still a senator, even though he's a former presidential candidate. He's still a senator, and his visit has as much legitimacy as Charlie Wilson going to Afghanistan.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I understand. I was hoping he wasn't he wasn't publicly breaking any laws. The Logan Act, he's not breaking at all, is he?
I don't believe he, you mean Rodman or McCain?
McCain.
We don't know what McCain's actual mission was and who he's acting on behalf of. If he went just as a U.S. Senator all on his own, there might be some questions asked, but because he is a U.S. Senator, he does have the right to do fact-finding trips anywhere in the world. And he can just say that's all it was. But again, going back and looking at what Charlie Wilson was doing in Afghanistan, a lot is going on we're probably not being told.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. You have yourself a good week.
All right, thank you. And we're going to switch over to Robert in Missouri. Aloha, Robert. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I had some other things, but then the last caller talking about the whole North Korea versus going to talk to Al Qaeda thing. You know, this is all just cracking these omelets in the eggs in the Middle East to make the big omelet. You know, this is lapdog Israel stuff that McCain's over there. Mossad's so deep into Syria, it's sick.
Well, remember, we're looking at overlapping agendas. No war is ever fought for just one reason. Wars are fought by multiple parties who have their own agendas that happen to focus on the same target. Israel hates Syria. They want more land. They want the Golan. The private central banks want to destroy any nation without private central banks. The U.S. wants Syria's oil on sale only for U.S. dollars. And where these overlaps happen, that's where the wars start. Got to take a break for commercials. Stay on the line, Robert. We'll come right back to you. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking with Robert out there in Missouri. And Robert, did you have another question?
Yeah, and the one big thing with Syria is I've been doing a lot of looking into it, and it's just like nobody's comfortable going after Iran with Syria still in the shape that it's in now. So you know that's the domino that has to fall before the attack on Iran, which everybody seems to think that's the big main crux of the matter, that they want to topple Assad before they go after Ahmadinejad and the mullahs and, you know, destroy that country like they have so many others.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one of the reasons why they're focusing on Syria, besides completing the encirclement of Iran ahead of the attack, is that Iran and Syria do have a mutual defense pact. And I think the ambition was that if they could get the war in Syria going strong enough, that Iran might come in and honor its treaty obligations, which would then open the door to an invasion by the U.S. or Israel. Because we have Israel basically saying we have a right to go in and bomb their power station. Nobody's really buying that. Nobody's buying that Iran is a threat to anybody. Iran has not invaded another country in a war of aggression in over 200 years. And so all this thing, weapons of mass destruction, we all remember how we were lied to about Iraq's weapons of mass destruction. They're not getting traction for popular support for a war against Iran, either in the United States or in Israel. So they've got to somehow maneuver Iran into doing something overt that will then justify some kind of retaliation, meaning a first strike.
Yeah, and who would ever have thought that, like, all of us Americans are looking for to Russia, and the guy that's leading Russia right now, Vladimir Putin, actually, you know, to put a stop to our own garbage that we're foisting upon the world, you know, at the behest of our real masters. That's what's so crazy. 20 years ago, who would have thought that you would have been like, who would have thought that you're looking to Russia to be the actual leader, you know, 20 years ago? That's what's so sickening. But I wanted to segue into something about the veterans and the Memorial Day stuff that we just had. I'm a veteran. I'm honorably discharged. And, you know, every person I come in contact with, these kids and everything that are even talking about joining the military, and any veterans I talk to, you know, I bring up this long litany of events: the USS Maine, the Gulf of Tonkin, the Lusitania, 9/11, all these things. It's like every stinking war that we've ever got in is by deception and false flag crap. And I'm like, and it's all for the banking cartel. I mean, none of them have ever really, you know, benefited us as a nation. It's all just been part of this two-sided banker war, fund both sides, and reap the profits and just destroy, you know, anything decent in the world. That's what's so sick. Is once you wake up to the realization that every war the United States has gotten in is all due to, it's just an outright bogus lie, and it's just, it really just makes you, it just puts this sour taste in your mouth as somebody that served in the, you know, I was in the Marine Corps, puts this sour taste in your mouth that says, you know what, I joined, and it was all a lie. It was all for a bunch of people that look at me, like Henry Kissinger said, as a dumb, stupid animal to be used as a pawn in foreign policy. And it's just really a shame. And then, you know, people look at you crazy when you tell them this stuff because they're still programmed by the, you know, the false history. And it's just so gross. And I try to deter anybody that is even thinking about joining the military. I say, get nowhere near the military.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you. And again, going back to our Memorial Day observances here, regardless of whether we agree with the wars or not, and obviously we don't agree with the wars, but we do have a moral duty to those young men and young women who put on that uniform, who keep their promises to a degree we seldom see within the nation's capital, and went out there and at least had good intentions of defending this nation against foreign enemies. And only to realize, of course, the enemies are within our walls and calling the shots and sending them out to die. Anyway, let's see. Do you have anything else, Robert?
I just wanted to say one quick thing. The Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association convention is this weekend here in St. Louis, right outside in St. Charles. So if anybody listening from Missouri can get there, Sheriff Richard Mack, Stuart Rhodes of Oath Keepers, Michael Badnarik, a whole litany of, you know, decent people to be here in my hometown. So it should be cool.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. And, yeah, we had Richard on the show yesterday, as a matter of fact, talking about this. We're going to let you go real quick there. Jonathan in Minnesota, I understand you've got a song you wrote about my website.
How you doing, Michael? Well, not exactly. It's just kind of a brief little tune that I more or less came up with in my head, sort of inspired by you, I guess. I love your show. So I just thought I would quick call in and bug you with it and see if you enjoyed it. Just
okay.
Acapella, no music. Should I go ahead?
Yes, go ahead. You've got 1 minute.
Thank you. We've all been to school, and we've all gotten fooled, and don't know the rules, and matter of fact, don't even know what game exists within this plane. Talking about that monetary.
Okay, I lied about how much time we had. I was misreading the clock here. Jonathan, when you get it recorded, email it in to me. We'll use it as bump music, but we got to take a break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And the phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Now, one of the ways that we know when Israel is getting ready to do something really tacky and disgusting is they go on this rant about anti-Semitic this, Hitler that. They just go out looking for anything that they can scream and cry about to try and wave the Nazis and the Holocaust at us. And it has hit an absolute nadir over this article from Business Insider, and one of the members at What Really Happened just put it up there. And basically it involves a billboard that J.C. Penney put up that is illustrated with a tea kettle. And apparently if you squint your eyes real hard, the tea kettle kind of sort of looks like a cartoon image of Adolf Hitler, assuming you have been drinking all weekend and have taken some serious psychoactive medication. And yet, Jewish groups are screaming that J.C. Penney is anti-Semitic and they're honoring Hitler. And we put the photo for this story on the article at whatreallyhappened.com. You need to go take a look at just how incredibly silly this is. But we've seen this pattern before. Anytime Israel is getting ready to provoke another crisis, start another war, attack somebody, they'll go on this rant, just anything that even remotely could be construed as having anything to do with Nazis. They're going to use it and pump it as hard as they can to remind everybody on planet Earth that we are supposed to feel very, very sorry for the Israelis because of something that happened in the first half of the last century to people who are no longer alive anymore. And this is ridiculous that they would make an issue about this. It's a tea kettle. That's all it is. It's a tea kettle. And they're screaming, oh no, this is going to remind people about Hitler. It's got to come down. And they're attacking J.C. Penney. I don't even like J.C. Penney. But I'm going to go down and I'm going to buy some stuff from them, just in my absolute disgust at the way they're being smeared and attacked over a tea kettle. It's absurd. We're going to go back to the phones here. Dave in California. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I have a theory of what Israel is going to do in order to provoke a war with Iran, particularly involving the United States.
Please enlighten us.
Well, they're not getting traction, as you say, with the nuclear bomb angle that Americans have been told prior to this effort. They've been told that Iraq was involved with nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction. So they're not able to get enough traction, as you say, to compel Americans to attack Iran. So what they're going to do is they're going to do the feminist angle. They're going to destroy the culture of Iran, claiming that they oppress women, that women are all, used
I've already seen that. They were trying to play that as a propaganda, but again, I don't think they're getting a lot of traction. They're just desperate for anything that they can say, we have a right to go in and destroy the country and make them live their lives the way we do here in the United States of America. And I think the reason that's falling short is because most Americans are looking around at the United States right now and thinking, this shouldn't be a model for anybody to follow in terms of how to run a nation. Between the predatory behavior of the private central bank, the government tyranny, the latest Gallup poll, it continues to show the majority of Americans is saying the federal government has become way too powerful. And
I agree.
And so I think Americans are saying we don't really have a moral right to be forcing our way of life on any other country, considering that it really doesn't work for us.
I agree, but I think that, since they cannot get any traction to compel Americans to attack Iran, I think that will be one factor that they're going to try to emphasize is the cultural oppression of women in Iran as a means to engineer distaste for the Iranian culture and the people. And,
but if you go out to Iranian websites, actual Iranian websites that show ordinary people living their lives, you'll see that women aren't anywhere near as oppressed as the corporate media is trying to sell. They're not all wearing head coverings. There are very modern urban people in Tehran. I remember seeing some photos taken at an Iranian nightclub where the women were there and they were just as scantily dressed as women in American nightclubs. And nobody was pounding on them for it. And again, I don't think it's getting traction. I think ultimately what's going to happen is Israel's just going to go ahead and bomb Iran's nuclear power station and then scurry back to Israel and wait for American kids to be placed as bullet stoppers. They've run out of any other option. Nobody's buying any of this propaganda. Iran is not a threat to the United States of America other than economic, and nobody's going to send their sons and daughters to be killed in a war to prop up the bankers, especially when the banks themselves are already on the verge of a self-created disaster.
Okay, well, let's hope they don't have any success in that regard. But
that's about all they can do, because they were trying. There were trial balloons on this idea of demonizing Iran over the issue of women's rights, and it didn't get any traction. It didn't get any traction. We're going to let you go here, and we're going to switch over to Larry in Oregon. Aloha, Larry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, compliments to you, because as I'm listening to your callers, you woke them all up.
Okay.
You're doing a great job, Michael.
Thank you.
I just wanted to relate to the Holocaust, because I'm thinking of it now as a weapon that is really set up and aimed, like when you run up against the Holocaust, you're running up against a machine gun nest that's hidden, and you come up the hill without knowing it. And I'm trying to analyze it as a weapon and how it's devised. And it's using the old, from plays way back and dramas and all the movies and television things we see to set up a villain. And so they set up this villain. Now, you become the villain when you say something that triggers this weapon. And
well, let me give you the backstory on this, okay? And what
you got it.
Okay, basically at the end of World War II. Because you have to remember, if you read Winston Churchill's own writings about World War II, or Eisenhower, or Truman's, they don't talk about any kind of a deliberate extermination program. They talk about massive deaths from the typhus epidemics that laid waste all across Germany, that afflicted not just the populations in those slave labor camps, it afflicted the guards, the doctors, the German people. It was completely out of control. That large crematorium at Auschwitz was actually built after the war was over. It was built by the Russians to incinerate the corpses to stop the infection. It was a serious public health issue. But at the end of World War II, you had all the Zionists. They had the Balfour Declaration. They wanted Palestine. But they were facing a political climate around the world where the world had united and shed much blood and gold on the principle that one people do not have a right to march into somebody else's country and just take it for their own use. That's what the whole point of going after Germany. Germany, you can't go into Poland and keep it for yourself, can't go into Norway, can't go into France. You're not allowed to do that. And yet that is exactly what the Zionists were asking to do in Palestine. Go into Palestine and just take it for their own use. So the Zionists needed a propaganda device that was so powerful and overwhelming that the same nations that united to stop Germany, stop the Nazis from taking other people's countries for their own use, would turn around, do an about-face, and say, yeah, it's okay for the Zionists to do to Palestine what the Nazis were not allowed to do to Poland and France and so forth. And they needed a propaganda device. And so these slave labor camps were transformed into extermination camps. Delousing with insecticide was turned into gassings. The deaths from typhus were turned into a deliberate program of extermination, and it was just blown up and fed by, media, Hollywood movies and everything to turn it into this giant deliberate extermination program so that the world would say, oh, well, yes, the Jews have to have their own homeland if they're ever going to be safe again. And that was basically what it is. And that was the big lie to convince the people of the world that what the Nazis could not be allowed to do in Europe, Israel had to be allowed to do in Palestine. And now they're stuck with it. They have to keep supporting that lie, even though modern science has caught up with many of the claims that were made. Ground-penetrating radar at Treblinka shows there are no mass graves there. The strata is still undisturbed from the last ice age. We understand that Zyklon B was an insecticide, and they not only fumigated the inmates at those camps, the guards and the officials also went through the same process to kill the body lice that was the primary vector for the typhus. And we know that the lampshades were not made out of human skin, it was goat skin. The claim that they were making bars of soap out of Jewish fat has been debunked. It's a wartime soap. There's very little fat in it, and most of it came from pigs, which is an embarrassment.
There's a method for creating a villain, and they use it all the time in movies and plays, and they have done that in reality to the American people and to anyone.
Well, I mean, we're still having Nazis waved at us. I mean, we're coming up on, we're already more than a half a century removed from that war, and yet the Nazis are still the top villains. I wrote a joke article last Christmas. I went out and I found clips from all the times Nazis are being put into movies, including Nazi porn, Nazis on the moon, Nazi werewolves, Nazi vampires, and I made a joke saying that if they wanted to milk the Nazis for one more time for the Christmas holidays, that we had to have Santa Claus versus the Nazis. And I found out only a month ago somebody's actually putting that into production. And they're trying to keep this thing alive, but the vast majority of us, I'm going to be 61 this summer, and this was all over and done with before I was even born. And so it's really kind of burned out, and they're trying to figure out some way they can keep it alive so that Israel can go on attacking their neighbors, saying we're afraid of the Nazis coming back. The Nazis are gone. They are gone. The only Nazis running around are actors hired to sell the agenda, to keep the donations coming into these various Jewish activist groups like the ADL. There are no real Nazis. Nobody wants to be the loser.
Jews have to be painted as being helpless victims when actually they're more billionaire Jews.
Well, I mean, John, I think it was it John Kerry or John McCain just last week was applauding Jews. He was at this big convention saying, you guys are in control of the banks, and he was meaning it as a compliment. And yeah, they're in positions of extreme control throughout our society, certainly in control of Wall Street and banking, certainly in control of the United States Congress. Israel's got the world's fourth or fifth largest nuclear arsenal, depending upon who you ask. They are really not helpless. But you're right. That's the image they keep selling, that we must spend our money and spend our children to protect the poor, helpless, Israelis from their neighbors. I got an idea. If you go back and you look at the history for the last 2,000 years, all of these problems always originate with this attitude by this group of people, the chosen ones, that they are not going to be part of the society around them, that the society around them exists to be preyed upon and looted. And, if Israel wants to be safe, what they have to do is start learning how to get along with other people and other nations around them. Draw their borders, finalize the borders, write a constitution, go back to peace through commerce. But, Israel's government right now has become totally dependent on having a paranoid population. The world is out to get them, and they have to keep maintaining that illusion even when it is Israel that is committing the acts of aggression.
Portrayed that way in movies, they're portrayed as helpless, innocent people, and they're not portrayed as the reality of what they really are.
No, they aren't, but that's another reason why, Hollywood is seeing so much of their box office go away. We're sick and tired of movies about German, Nazi, Holocaust, whatever. I remember I actually got asked to review Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. And as soon as they had the Nazis up there, and I said, that's it, I'm done with this movie. I'm tired. And by the way, Israel's new thing is, if you're tired of watching movies and TV shows about the Nazis, it's just another form of anti-Semitism. That you're an anti-Semite if you will not accept you're an anti-Semite if you will not accept your daily brainwashing of movies about Hitler and the Nazis and stuff. And all of this happened before I was born. I got nothing to do with it. I refuse to feel guilty about it. There are crimes and genocides and aggressions taking place here and now before our very eyes that we can and should try and deal with, instead of constant worship of the past.
Israel is projected and painted as being a victim in the Middle East. I don't have any conception of them being a victim. They're not like some bad guy shooting a dog. They're not the poor innocent victim over there.
But it's their projected image. We're victims. Feel sorry for us. Give us money. Give us your children to fight our wars for us. We're helpless, poor, weak little people. And yet, if you look around with your own eyes, it's obviously not true. But it is a core of their propaganda campaign. We're running out of time. I got to let you go here. We're going to grab a quick phone call from Werner in New Brunswick. Aloha, Werner. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Yeah, good afternoon, Mike. I just turned in and I heard again the argument about the poor, victimized race of people.
Yeah.
And if those victims are really belong to that race of people, it's a different question.
Well, let me insert a comment here, because this idea of playing victim to get attention or sympathy is not confined to one group. We have seen all kinds of hate crime hoaxes that extend beyond Israel and their supporters. We've seen gays committing hate crime hoaxes. Back during the heyday of the feminist male bash campaign in the 1990s, women were faking rape attacks because they wanted the attention. There was the Davis, California rape hoax, where this girl claimed that she was gang raped in the divider of the highway, and they were on the verge of passing a male-only curfew. When people like to do this to get attention. It's just Israel has raised this behavior to a fine art and a national character trait.
The main point I wanted to make: who was responsible and who were the enforcers in Eastern Europe about the genocide of tens of millions, altogether close to 100 million people, in order to bully their ideology through, in order to achieve world government? And where did many of them immigrate to? To Palestine.
Yes. All right, we got to take a commercial break here. Werner, we're going to let you go, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And I just got this in the email, and I think it's great. It says, first they came for my pressure cooker, but I said nothing because I didn't use pressure cookers. Then they came for my tea kettles, and still I did nothing. I love it. That's very, very clever indeed here. Apparently there has been a major train derailment in Maryland. Loud explosions. They're starting to go in on that. And again, it's a reminder. Our infrastructure is in terrible, terrible shape because it's been neglected. In fact, the U.S. infrastructure gets a D+ grade from civil engineers. This is being reported over at IngeniousPress.com. And this is vital, critical infrastructure for what is supposed to be the most advanced nation on earth. And it is literally rotting away. We've had these bridges collapsing. We've had these train derailments. It's in really, really bad shape out of neglect because the government takes your tax money and instead of using it to take care of your country, they're using it to take care of Israel and to take care of Wall Street and to wage war on those countries that won't sell their oil for U.S. dollars or won't accept private central banking. They have bet the entire country on their agenda, and they're losing. All righty, let's see. The studies are in, and Obamacare is failing miserably. One of the latest problems, of course, is that because of the extremely high costs associated with Obamacare, those businesses that did have health plans are now having to scale them back. So workers' health coverage has actually been reduced by Obamacare, not improved. We know that we're seeing all across America where companies are firing their full-time workers and they're hiring all part-time staff so they can evade the cost of Obamacare. This is an unmitigated disaster. Senator Max Baucus, one of the architects of the bill, is saying the implementation is heading for a train wreck. And by the way, sort of crossing the line between Obamacare and gun rights issues, you're 600 times more likely to be killed by Obamacare than by an assault rifle. But you will have your Obamacare, but you're not allowed to have assault rifles here. The Republicans are looking at Obamacare, and they're already drooling, seeing that it's going to be a key platform of their campaign in 2014. And, of course, the problem with that is nobody in Washington, D.C. is looking at the problems. They're only seeing, how can I use this for my re-election campaign? They're totally 100% driven by agenda, and nobody inside the Beltway is really thinking about what's best for the nation and its people. Whether that is simply an epiphenomenon of the political process, or because they're all on SSRIs, or there's something in the water inside Washington, D.C. and all the pipes inside those antique buildings, I don't know. But that is a key reason for the failure of the federal government. They're looking out for themselves and their cronies, and nobody's maintaining an overview. Nobody maintains the long view. We're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, hour number 3. And a reminder, at the bottom of the hour, at 3:30 Central Time, we are expecting to connect with Cindy Sheehan and get an update on her Tour de Peace bike ride across America. She was supposed to be with us a week ago. Yesterday, turned out she was dodging tornadoes, which tells you approximately where she is right now. But we did reconnect with her, and supposedly we're good to go here at the bottom of the hour. Now, we're getting a report out of Saudi Arabia that Saudi Arabia's king has suffered a medical crisis and has been deemed clinically dead for 6 days, is being kept alive through heroic life support. And I would imagine they're keeping him alive while they try and work out the issues of succession without triggering some kind of a public uprising or a revolution or a civil war, because that is a huge, huge prize, that throne, and the money that goes with it. But that's the report we're getting out of Saudi Arabia. That could add a new uncontrolled variable in the Mideast. If the king's successor has a slightly different view of the United States and Israel from his current highnessness. Another fire, this one on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship, basically took out this large area above the stern, large restaurant with a panorama view, common feature on cruise ships. Boy, it's getting really rough out there with all these cruise ship lines. First Carnival, now Royal Caribbean. And it kind of makes you wonder, where are the regulatory agencies that are supposed to be keeping these systems, these ships, safe for use? And the answer is, of course, sequestration. The budgets have been cut. And when you don't have outside inspectors keeping an eye on these facilities, they're allowed to decay, because the money junkies at the top of all these companies, they want to save money, they want to cut corners, and that's where these disasters start happening. And this is going to damage the cruise line ship as a whole, because before it was just Carnival. Now it's Royal Caribbean, and they've got a really good reputation. And now they're in trouble. All right, we're going to grab a quick phone call here. Kyle in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Kyle, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. My mother-in-law is a VP at a big hospital in the Philadelphia area. Big Democrat, voted for Obama, all that stuff. She is now dealing with the implementation of Obamacare and what it means as far as converting everything over from paper records to the electronic records. She says that when people find out just how messed up and how integrated this entire process is, it's going to be like she's already had examples where people go to doctors and, they're Jan Smith here to see Dr. such-and-so, and they walk in and the doctor says, well, hi, Mrs. Carlisle, I understand your knee is bothering you, and they came there because they have migraine headaches or whatever.
Yes.
She said that there's absolutely no way that this plan is implemented in any sort of orderly manner, and that when people start going to their doctor and they're prescribing a medicine that they weren't supposed to be prescribed, and, they're having adverse reactions, the lawsuits and the rage is going to just erupt.
Well, see, here's one of the reasons why I'm very concerned about this totally electronic record keeping that's part of Obamacare, because we know there are bad prescription medicines out there. My concern is that if you were the victim of medical malpractice, which is a major, major cause of death in this country, when you had paper records, you could go back, find out what was wrong, and take the appropriate corrective action or remedy through the court system. But now those records can be changed. There is no guarantee that those records are not subject to editing after the fact. Stay with me. Got to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Kyle. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking with Kyle in Pennsylvania about Obamacare. And your timing is absolutely perfect, because I'm watching here on Fox News where they're talking about how the Obama administration is planning on mounting a major advertising campaign this summer to convince Americans that Obamacare is really good and it's wonderful and you shouldn't complain about the high costs and the deteriorating services and the fact that you can arbitrarily be refused medical treatment if they don't think you can be turned into a profit center. And as I mentioned before we were going into this thing, in the year 2011, 323 Americans were killed by assault rifles. 195,000 Americans were killed by medical mistakes. And you're being told you have to sign into this system of medical mistakes. And the problem I have with this electronic record system, where they get rid of the permanent paper record and everything is on a computer, is the computer is subject to alteration to protect the doctors when they misprescribe medications. And again, I'm thinking about to how we lost my youngest brother, who, when he basically died of a heart attack, we found in his medicine chest 2 medications that are not supposed to be prescribed together at the same time. And so we know this stuff goes on all the time. And our government is so totally on the side of the corporations. They've literally set up a system where the medical establishment can erase its mistakes in order to forestall lawsuits.
Well, and what else she's saying is she's seeing a rash of doctors who are leaving any affiliation with hospitals. They're setting up their own private practices where it's a cash-only deal. So you want to go see a doctor, okay, if it's, you have a rash and he has to prescribe you something, or, you're having serious complications with your heart, $150 flat, $150 to $200 flat. You go in there, the doctor will see you, he'll write you a prescription, he'll do whatever he can do in that office. But if you need something that requires a hospital, like knee replacement or, angioplasty or something like that, she said to find a doctor who's going to be able to do that, it's going to be, your knee replacement, you need a new knee. Okay, well, that doctor will be in this hospital 8 months from now. We're going to schedule you for this time. Oh, and by the way, he's got 15 other surgeries that day. You don't think that's going to lead to doctors who are just overworked with even more?
Oh, yeah. I mean, even beside the workload is all the additional paperwork the doctor himself or herself has to complete. And the amount of time that doctors are spending with patients is shrinking rapidly. And it is an absolute disaster. And I stay away from hospitals. If I have to go to a doctor, I go to a little private practice.
This is not beneficial to the patient.
No, it isn't. It's all about making money for the health insurance companies. It's all about making money for the HMOs. This all goes back to the Richard Nixon administration, in which health care stopped being about health and became all about making another buck from the American people.
Well, what it comes down to is, if you walk into your doctor's office who's in a hospital, when you walk in there, it's you, and it's only you. But behind that doctor is insurance companies, is hospitals, or drug reps, and it's almost as if you were buying a timeshare. You're being sold product. You're being pushed in directions. Doctors are going
we know that. I mean, we went through that with my wife's joint pain issues. She went through about 5 years of excruciating pain, and we spent thousands and thousands of dollars on orthodox medicine and doctors, and it was just always a new pill or a new cream or a new special shoes or whatever. And we finally found out all it was she was reacting to formaldehyde precursors in the low-end cosmetics and goopy household products. And once we got rid of those, her joint pains went away. But doctors aren't about finding what works. It's about selling you the next whatever it is they're trying to sell you. And that is why it's gone horribly, horribly wrong. And that's why when you go out to Americans, if you find somebody who's fallen into that prescription medication trap, you will find, a dozen bottles in their medicine chest, and they're all hideously, hideously expensive.
Well, and you're finding examples where these drug companies are sending doctors on lavish vacations for 2 weeks where all they have to do is spend, 25 minutes in a seminar on a new drug, and they make if it's a pain relief drug, well, they make every symptom something of pain relief. So you could go in there with, a mild headache, a sinus infection or something, and they could write you hardcore narcotics because these doctors feel almost obligated at the point because of all the gifts that are being bestowed upon them.
It's more blatant than that. This Gardasil vaccine, the doctors or the hospital the doctor works for gets a percentage of the fee for that shot. They are financially incentivized to stick those needles into our kids here. Somebody sent me a picture of this wonderful T-shirt. I got to read it to you. Okay, it says, I take aspirin for the headache caused by the Zyrtec I take for the hay fever I got from Relenza, for the uneasy stomach from the Ritalin I take, for the short attention span caused by the Scopoderm TS I take, for the motion sickness I got from the Lomatil I take, for the diarrhea caused by the Xenical, for the uncontrolled weight gain from the Paxil I take, for the anxiety from Zocor I take for my high cholesterol, because exercise and a good diet is just too much trouble. And that's exactly right. You're sold these medications. They have a side effect. They're going to sell you another medication for the side effect. Then they'll sell you another medication for the other side effect. And it's all about making the money. And I'm not a Christian Scientist, but I think the longer I stay away from doctors and hospitals, the better my health is. And again, considering that I'm going to be 61 this summer, you know, I have a few minor issues that I have to deal with, but certainly not like what my youngest brother was going through in the months before he passed away. And you know, he'd gone on a health kick, and then he goes to the doctor, and the doctor says, oh, your cholesterol's high, and he starts pounding the medications on him, and the next thing you know, my youngest brother has a stroke that permanently impairs him, and then later on, of course, he died of the heart attack. And
well, my wife and I just signed up for a $150 health insurance policy, or life insurance policy rather. And when you sign up for that, they send someone out to your house, and she takes blood and takes your vitals and takes your urine and takes this whole gamut of things. My wife, she actually works in a hospital too, in a doctor's office. So, you know, she's having issues or whatever. She'll, you know, let me see the doctor, see what he says. She's probably on 3 or 4 medications. I haven't been to a doctor in probably 5 years.
Yeah.
I haven't been there for any reason whatsoever. I haven't sort of need to go. We got her blood work back. Her triglycerides were higher than mine. I tested out so much better than she did. And I got a lower premium, even though on the questionnaire they specifically asked when was the last time you were at a doctor, which could have easily affected my rate. So I couldn't agree with you more. All these, I mean, it is a business. It is. Well, our health insurance is making a fortune off of me because I don't go to the doctor and I don't go to the hospital. I don't actually remember the last time I had to go to the doctor. I don't get the annual flu shot. I don't get the flu. I think the last time I actually had to go to the doctor is I was suffering intense migraine headaches, which they gave me a medication for that I forget what it was called, but when I dropped one by accident into the aquarium, the fish were swimming sideways for about 5 hours after that. Then we found out it was just MSG. I respond to MSG, and now that I don't have MSG in my diet, I don't get the headaches any longer. And, you know, I threw away the medication. And it's all about pushing product. And, again, you'd think most Americans would look at those big glitzy commercials for pharmaceutical products, and they hear all these things that can go wrong, it can kill you, it can cause whatever, and see all those commercials for law firms that are saying, did you take Flamistan, then you are entitled to money because, and you look at that and you'd say, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to take these medications. I'm going to take my vitamins. I'm going to eat healthy, organic, natural, you know, and just keep, you know, save me from all the chemicals. The last time I went to a hospital was when I was 23. I'm 32 now. I had broken my foot the weekend before Easter. I went to the ER. The doctor said, yeah, it's a broken foot. I'm going to put you in a boot. You know, it'll heal in 6 weeks. Go see a doctor sometime after the holiday. So call the specialist afterwards. The specialist says, okay, if the ER surgeon said it wasn't anything major, we'll wait 2 weeks. That's when I can get you in on a reasonable time, and then we'll come in there and we'll take a look at it. Well, so that's 3 weeks after I broke my foot. I go to the doctor, and he tells me, this thing is screwed to hell. You have to get pins put into it. It's called a Jones fracture.
Yeah, I know.
3.5 weeks that I lost because 3.5 weeks I lost because some doctor was just writing it off as a broken foot without caring. I could have gotten the surgery done much earlier.
Yeah.
Split my recovery time from 19 weeks down to 12 weeks.
Yeah, it is. It's far too driven by money, and just looking at our society as a whole, the quest for those pieces of ink and paper have come to dominate our entire society. where other considerations of quality work or actually caring for your patient are subordinate. And this lust for the ink and paper, as the economy tightens, is destroying what is best in our human nature. And I'm not surprised that the rest of the world does not look at the United States as any kind of a moral leader any longer.
If there's one thing that David Icke has ever said right, it's lawyers destroy justice, religions destroy spirituality, doctors destroy health, and the government destroys liberty. It's so
That's a very good, no, but that's absolutely right. If everybody in America were healthy, all these medical establishments would be out of business. They, consciously and subconsciously, they need us to be ill. They need us to eat the chemicals that are in our food that make us sick so they can sell us a cure for that. We got to take a break for commercials. Thank you. We're going to let you go. More phone calls and our pledge drive when we come back from these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're going to take a phone call. Art, aloha. Art, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I originally called in to talk about Israel, but you brought up the topic of assault weapons, so I'm going to have to switch to that because, you know, I am a real hardcore person when it comes to language and using the correct wording. So if you'll bear with me, I'll get this out real quick, and then I'll hang up and you can respond. If all of these people, whatever that number was, I forget what it is, were killed by assault weapons, then they were killed by police and military personnel, because no civilian can possess or even purchase an assault weapon unless they purchase it from the black market. Assault weapons are select fire, which means the flip of a lever goes into full automatic weaponry, and you can't have that. You can't buy it unless you got connection with the black market.
Okay, well, like all right, your issue...
Start using the right words and stop touting this crap.
Well, the thing is, this statistics on the 2011 deaths is using assault weapon in the context of the media and the government, meaning any military-style semi-automatic rifle. And yes, some of those deaths do involve killings by police and the military, but not all of them. We got to let you go here because I got something I got to get to here before we get to Cindy Sheehan at the bottom of the hour, and that is, of course, a reminder that Republic Broadcasting is in the middle of a fundraising drive. They're having to buy new equipment. They're having to replace old equipment. They're reaching out to new AM and FM on-air affiliates, all of which cost money, funding for the satellite link so that Part 15 radio stations can connect to our show and help spread the word about what's going on. So John Stadmiller has put up this 1,000 ounce of silver funding drive, and I know they're doing really well with it so far, but they could always use a little bit more to get to the goal. And if you have an old silver round or bar that you bought for just a few bucks back when the prices were cheaper, and you want to send it on in, you can send it to Republic Broadcasting Fundraising, 2251 Double Creek Road, Suite 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664, and you can get that address by going to the republicbroadcasting.org website, and just in that little red submenu it says contact. You can click that and you can get the address to mail that in, or mail in a check, or mail in some of that ink and paper Federal Reserve stuff. There's a PayPal link. Remember, Republic Broadcasting does not get corporate funding. We don't have large advertisers. We don't get checks with lots of zeros in them from shadowy government, non-governmental organizations. We are out here trying to stop this rush toward World War III. The war hawks are spending literally millions and millions of dollars to sell you and your children on a new war. We need your help to stop them. And also you can call, if you want to make a donation, you can call Julie at 800-724-2719, extension 116. But however you can help, the only way we're going to get the big money corruption out of our government is for the little money to all unite together. And if everybody listening to this show sent in just $5, all put together, it would help us go out and reach that larger audience and get the word out. Right now, because of Triplegate, a lot of Americans are starting to ask important questions about just what's gone on with this country. We need to be able to reach them to give them the answers they deserve, and we need your help to do it. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, gold got hammered again. Starting right at the opening of trade, the Dow Industrial soared up about 200. They didn't keep the gains. The market closed they lost about half the gains. So they're out there manipulating it. And apparently on Monday over in Europe, the price of gold dropped $140 per ounce. That's a major, major hit. Now, at a time when gold brokerages are failing to fulfill their gold delivery futures contracts and are having to settle in cash, it is clear that the price of gold is being driven downward through fraud and manipulation, mostly by flooding the markets with paper gold contracts, which have no more chance of being settled successfully than the ones we're seeing collapse now. But it's done to drag down the price of physical, to try and discourage people from closing their bank accounts and going into gold, or getting out of the stock market and going into gold, but mostly to allow the money junkies like George Soros and the private central banks to try and grab as much gold as they can to cover their bullion shortfalls and basically prepare for the collapse of the paper and ink currency. So this is your opportunity. If you have been thinking about getting into gold, now's a good time to do it. As long as the money junkies are driving that price down, this is when you should buy, not sell. And again, you can go to republicbroadcasting.org or whatreallyhappened.com. There's a banner ad there for the Republic Trading Group where you can basically go in and buy yourself some gold coins or gold bars and know that you're going to get what you're paying for. Okay? So it's a really, really good time to do that. Now, speaking of stocks and everything, stock in Spain's Bankia took a major tumble. They went out and did a new issue of stock trying to raise money, and apparently it backfired on them. Their stock price tumbled, and their stockholders are now screaming, "What the heck are you doing? You're cheating us on both ends." All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. When we come back, we hope to have Cindy Sheehan on the line. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And joining us on the phone now is Cindy Sheehan. Hardly need to explain who she is or what she does. Cindy, this is a real treat to have you back on the show. I remember the last time you were just in the middle of all the craziness around Camp Casey. We were only able to talk for like 2 minutes, and now we got you for a lot longer time. I understand the U.S. Peace Memorial has nominated you for their Peace Prize this year, and I want to tell you get my vote. Would you tell us all now about the Tour de Peace, what it's doing, and where you are?
Okay. Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me on. But actually, I already won the Peace Award. I was the first winner back when they started it. So, but the U.S. Peace Memorial Award. But anyway, the Tour de Peace is a cross-country bike ride where we're riding for peace and justice. We're on about 2/3 of the way done. We're in St. Louis today, and we've been riding across. We've had across the country. We've had many stops and have been able to interact with many people. And I think people are getting the idea that, you know, even though the problems are global in scale, the solutions have to be local in scope. And I think people are just getting so disgusted and disappointed and disillusioned with our government that, you know, they're starting, I think, to really be willing to, you know, change their own lives in a positive way, because they're starting to realize that people in washed-up D.C., as I like to call it, don't have our best interests at heart. And so we are going to end up in Washington, D.C., or washed-up D.C. on July 3rd. We are going to have a convergence, the cycling convergence on the White House. And then we're basically going to go out and go home and just be busy trying to consolidate all of the work that we've done this past 3 months cycling across the country.
Well, I know that certainly within the corporate media you're not getting the attention you deserve, and we here in the independent media are trying to keep the focus on there. Where would people go in terms of a website to see the latest updates and photos and videos from Le Tour de Peace?
Okay, yeah, we have had zero national corporate media coverage for Tour de Peace. And so we have a website, tourdepeace.org, and also we have a very active Facebook page where it's almost, we update photos and statuses in real time, and that's, the Facebook page is also called Tour de Peace. So if people want to like our Facebook page, they can get more current information.
Okay, well, I'm going to link both of those to the front page of my website so people can plug in and follow what you're doing. And it is, you know, it almost reminds us of when Gandhi did his march to the sea to basically try and poke his finger in the eye of the British government. And it seems to me that official Washington, D.C. is taking the attitude of ignoring you with dignity with all the other problems they've got going there. Can you give us an idea of like how many people have come out to support you and basically bike along with you?
Well, today it's just I'm the only full-time cyclist on the tour currently. We've had as many as a dozen people with us. Our route is also published at the website. People can come out, look and see if we're going to be near you. You can ride with us for as long as you want or as little as you want. And, you know, or come out to the events in every, like, large city along the way. We've had these events. And, you know, we've had from, you know, just a handful of people to standing room only, depending on how good the local organizers are. But upcoming, we have an event in Peoria, Illinois, and then Chicago, Illinois will be June 3rd. And since we left California, we've been on Route 66. And so Chicago, Illinois is the end of Route 66. So we're going to have like a big rally there at Grant Park in Chicago. And also it's the day that Bradley Manning's trial starts. So we're going to have a solidarity action for Bradley Manning also.
All right, that sounds good. I'm actually old enough to remember when Route 66 was still the main thoroughfare, and it was a lot of fun to drive. Of course, I understand.
It's been amazing to bike. We've just had the best time, and, you know, we thought, we were hoping that it would pick up a little more steam along the way and we'd have more people riding. But we really feel like we're hogging all the fun to ourselves because it's really been amazing and it's just been a blast.
It is a beautiful.
And we feel we're doing something very good too. You know?
Well, you are doing something.
You do good and have so much fun.
Well, you are doing something very good, and of course, the mitigating factor, of course, is you're dealing with some negative weather across the middle of the country. I remember when you were originally scheduled on our show a week ago, you were dodging tornadoes that day, which
absolutely we weren't chasing them, we were fleeing them.
Yes, boy, that's amazing. I really. The photos and videos just have to be absolutely amazing. So you're going to be in Chicago on June 3rd. What is your next big stop after that?
We have Ann Arbor, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan, and then we go down to Ohio, and we have several stops in Ohio. We have Toledo, Columbus, Kent, Bowling Green. So we're going to do quite a bit in Ohio, and then really nothing until we get to Virginia. If any listeners are in Pennsylvania, we don't have one organizer in Pennsylvania who's willing to put together a rally or an event for us. So if anybody wants to go to the website and see how they can help, that'll be great. And then the big thing in Washington D.C. is July 3rd, and I literally have a flight out that night. I've spent a lot of time in Washington D.C. I spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C. jails, and I don't think that, I think that that's where the corrupt power structure is, but I think, like we say along the way, it's the journey, not the destination, and what's happening wherever you live, whatever community you're in, is more important than what's happening in Washington, D.C. So I have a flight home that night, and I'm going to go back home, and like I said, work to consolidate all of the efforts that we've made in this past 3 months that we've been on the road.
Okay, so if you are listening to this broadcast right now and you are in Pennsylvania and you want to help organize a stop for Cindy Sheehan's Tour de Peace, go to her website at tourdepeace.org, and in the left black menu bar you will see where it says Get Involved, and if you click on that, there's a sub-menu with all the toolkits that you need to be a local organizer, and you can connect with Cindy and her people about setting up something along her route where she could stop and talk to the people about this very important work of just bringing an end to all of these wars of conquest before they really get out of control and go nuclear, which is going to be a bad day for anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, things are getting worse every day, and we don't understand why there aren't millions of people out in the streets. I know that a lot of people got hypnotized by, the Obama fraud, but obviously things are getting worse, and we need to and that's one of the main focuses of the tour. It's putting aside partisan loyalties and looking inside at your core principles and being an activist based on your principles, not based on what political party is in power. And people have to do that. Our way of life here in the United States is crumbling. People are dying all over the world because of active wars, drone bombing, covert wars, and it's up to us to put a stop to it. And the people in Washington D.C., they don't listen to us. They don't care about people dying or people being impoverished or people losing their homes. And so we're the ones that have to care about it. We're the ones that have to, really, literally get off our keisters and do something for good.
Well, I think more and more people are very tired of the wars. I think that if you're not seeing as much of a crowd as you'd like to, I think it is more reflective of Americans thinking that there's really nothing that they can do, and of course that is really where we need to educate them. I don't think Americans think the wars are good ideas. It's just they don't really know what to do about it. They want to know what's going to be an effective way of getting out there. And the importance of joining a project like yours, of having the courage to stand out there or bike ride with you, is simply to give other people the courage to speak out or take action themselves to build that consensus. And I am sure that there are way more people are supportive of what you're doing than maybe physically showing up. Again, the weather is sadly a bit of a deterrent. This idea of a bike ride across the entire country, again, unless they know exactly where your route is ahead of time, they may not know where to show up. So what we're going to do is I'm definitely going to plug into your Facebook page, and I'm just going to keep a little running banner at the top here so people can go in and just basically tap that and know where you're going. And again, if you're listening to this show from Pennsylvania, you need to get in touch with Cindy's organization, tourtopeace.org, and get involved to help her set up some kind of an event or meeting there in Pennsylvania as she heads on into the East Coast in Washington, D.C., arriving on July 3rd. And by the way, I'm very delighted you're going to be in and out of Washington, D.C. one day before this Kokesh armed march, because I think that's going to turn into a disaster.
Well, Michael, I agree with you, and I at first was going to be like a human shield, but I just think that it's best to be as far away from that as possible. I think it's like one of the most ill-advised, ridiculous things I've ever heard of.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because Cindy, right now you're a national resource for we the people, and we got to keep you safe and healthy, because a lot of people look at you and they see what you've gone through, what you lost in the war, and having this incredible amount of courage to just stand up and continue to make statement after statement, whether it's Camp Casey, the Tour de Peace. Do you have anything planned in the long run? Where do you go from here?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I do have two other people with me that have been with me the entire way. We've had other people come in and out, but we've literally put our lives on hold for 3 months to be able to do this. I'm 55 years old. I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I'm riding my bike 50 miles a day, and just getting stronger and stronger all the time, by the way. And I miss my grandchildren, I miss my children, but I think that the issues are so urgent and so imperative that we have to get out of our comfort zones. And, one problem with people in the United States is that, we get locked in these comfort zones or our little kind of spheres of influence, and we don't put ourselves outside that. And we have to stretch ourselves and put ourselves outside that for our children and grandchildren. And that's what I have to keep telling, my little grandchildren, that I'm doing this for them, to make the world a better place for not only them, but all the children around the world. So, you know, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's just really rewarding. And, you know, I think the contacts that we're making and the follow-up that we're going to be able to do, I think it's going to really start making a difference. You know, we've been to many communities, and, you know, we think that, you know, food security, growing your own food, it's really great. We went to a Monsanto protest here in St. Louis, and it's really great to do that. But, you know, our communities, we can grow our own food that are free from the poison of GMOs. We can share with each other. We can have farmers markets. You know, we can have all kinds of cooperatives that make healthy communities, and we don't have to worry about what's going out and washed up BC. So that's what, you know, that's what we're going to do in the long term. But in the short term, when I get back home, I'm going to get together my campaign because I'm going to be running for governor of California.
You are. This is the first I heard of it. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Well,
Count me in.
I don't know if it's a congratulations thing because I've run for office before, but, you know, we can talk about these issues better on a state level, I think, than on a federal level. So that's why I'm going to run for governor.
Well, count me in. I'm absolutely going to support and back you in your race for the governor's office. And again, we'll give you a platform. The corporate media will not be able to ignore you if you're a candidate for governor. And I'm absolutely delighted to hear this.
Well, and I think I did in 2008 run for Congress against Nancy Pelosi, and I came in second, and I got about 50,000 votes. So I think in California, running in the entire state, I do think that they won't be able to ignore the message, and that's what it's all about. It's about the message.
I agree with that. I've actually toyed with the idea of declaring myself a presidential candidate in 2016 under the slogan, "He could hardly be any worse." But again, as a means to open up the venues to get the important messages out there.
Well, a little known fact, I ran for Vice President of the United States in 2012.
That's right, you did. I remember seeing that. And
a little known fact.
Little known fact there.
It was a well-kept secret.
Well, do you want to be my vice presidential candidate in 2016? You're welcome.
Okay, I don't know.
I know. I'm just teasing you. I'm just teasing you.
I think that it's better for us to run for local office. I don't think we give up politics. A lot of people say, "Oh, you know, we shouldn't be involved in politics," but I think that's wrong because I think that concedes that we are giving all the power to the so-called two-party system, and we can't do that. We have to keep battling against that, no matter how impossible it seems. We can't just give up and concede all of our power to them.
No, we definitely cannot do that. And we're coming up here on a commercial break. We've got about a minute left before the commercial break. Is there something you want to fit in there for our listeners? And of course, we're going to close out the show with you on the other side of the commercial break.
You want me to hang on during the break?
Yeah, I want you to hang on during the break. I want to bring you back and let you basically sum up and wrap up for our listeners. What do you need? How can people help? Really, that's really the message we need to get out there.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so we've got about another minute before the commercial break here, and basically.
Well, you know what? If you can't come out and support us physically, you can always donate. You know, any bit helps. 5, 10, whatever, how much money. We also have a nonprofit, so it's actually.
Okay, did we just lose the connection? I think we just lost the connection. All right, maybe we'll get it back over the commercial break. But the other thing that you can do is go to Cindy's website and her Facebook page and forward it to your entire social network. This has to go viral. As Cindy Sheehan was saying, she's getting zero coverage from the corporate media. They don't even want to pretend that she exists right now. Going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha. Welcome back to the show. We got Cindy back on the line, and before I turn the microphone over to her for the close of the show, as I was saying before the break, the most important thing you can do right now is go to Cindy's website and her Facebook page. We've got them linked to my page so you can find them real easy. Share those URLs with your entire social network. Put as much attention on what Cindy is doing as you can to get the word out, because she's been blacklisted or whatever you want to call it by the corporate media. Cindy, what do you want to tell our listeners in the next 4 minutes?
Well, you know, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me on. And and hopefully we can give you some updates along the way. We only have 36 days left, but you know, if people can afford to, we can always use some money. There's a donate link at the website. But like you said, the most important thing to do is to share the Facebook page and share our website. Get on my newsletter at cindysheehansoapbox.com. I do have my own podcast, and we have a lot. You know, I have a lot of information also at cindysheehansoapbox.com. And just like really become involved in your community and your own life and your family, and you know, just like do whatever you can every day. I always wake up and I'm very excited about how I can make the world a better place every day, and just no matter what it takes. You know, for me, it's at all costs. I think that the situation is so urgent right now. Is we need bold people doing bold things to make the kind of change that we need.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. And the government and the corporate media are able to do what they do because they sell you this illusion that you are all alone when you're asking questions or doubting the official policy. But if 300 million Americans all stand up and say, we all agree this war is wrong, we're going in a bad direction, against that kind of overwhelming public consensus, the corporate media can't stand a chance, and that is why what Cindy is doing is really so important. You need to support her. You need to help spread the word. The corporate media is trying to pretend that she and her tour de peace do not exist. You can counter that. 1 million people on their blog sharing that URL will get the word out more than the corporate media could even hope to do. And it's really important.
Well, absolutely. And reach out to your family and friends who might not necessarily agree with me or you 100%. You know, it seems like we're always talking to the same people. We need to reach outside that circle and be talking to different people too. Maybe one of these days something's going to click.
Well, you're absolutely correct. Right now, because of Triplegate, Benghazi, DOJ, IRS, millions of Americans who weren't thinking about things before are starting to think, and they're starting to ask questions, and we need to guide those people to Cindy Sheehan and others where those questions can be answered. And we need your help to do that. You have to become our media network.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
All right. Well, Cindy, we're at the end of the show here. I'm going to let you go. I know you got some peddling to do there, and you're probably going to be incredibly healthy and strong by the time you reach Washington, D.C. And we're going to stay in touch with you from now through the end of this thing on July 3rd. And thank you again for spending time with us today. It was a real treat to have you back on the show.
Oh, Michael, thank you so much, and we'll talk again sooner.
All right, you got it. There's the music. It's time for us to get on out of here and get some things done. We'll be back tomorrow on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, stay safe, stay well, stay skeptical, stay informed. Please support Republic Broadcasting. We need your help. I know a lot of people got their hands out right now. It's just the reality of the economy. We all do need your help. We are in this time when we've got a chance to really change things. We need your help to do it. So until tomorrow, aloha, America.